hate to inform you, chat, something terrible has occurred. Something incredibly terrible has occurred. Eurovision, the Eurovision Song Contest, has become political. It's an absolute turnout for the books. Of all things, the Eurovision Song Contest. The Eurovision Song Contest has become political. I can't believe... See, it wasn't political at all before, when certain countries would win based upon geopolitical reasons. For example, Ukraine winning before. Or indeed, it was never political at all when Russia were being excluded because of the invasion of Ukraine. That was just completely unpolitical. It was completely unpolitical. But unfortunately, the terrible leftists and the anti-Semites, they've turned it political by thinking that a country that's committing ethnic cleansing shouldn't compete and should be boycotted, and think that other people should boycott them too. And this, it's basically like the Nazis now, chat. It's so political, it's basically Nazism to say that maybe Israel shouldn't compete. Think about what Eden Golan is thinking, chat. Think about what Eden Golan is thinking whilst representing the country that's committing ethnic cleansing, both in Gaza and indeed in the West Bank, because we've just found out today that a village in the West Bank is having all of its olive crops burnt by settlers because settler violence is continuing whilst all eyes are on the Gaza Strip, almost like that was the point of everything. But no, she's just a poor, small bean. She's a poor, small bean being terrorised by the nasty Islamists, which aren't even targeting her directly. Like, she's been given extra security detail. But the idea that she specifically is being protested rather than the country that she's there representing is just a complete nonsense that people continue to try and say, despite there being no evidence for this being the case. Because if it was me, right? If it was me and my country was doing a whole ethnic cleansing, I wouldn't want to represent them at Eurovision. You know? I wouldn't want to represent a country. I would be ashamed of my country if they were doing the whole ethnic cleansing. But, you know, unfortunately, the protesters are Hamas now. Malmo is Hamas. Greta Thunberg, she's now Hamas as well. The Hamas truly is in the room with us right now. And after all of these incredibly unpolitical years of the Eurovision Song Contest, it's finally been brought down to being political. After so many years of being totally apolitical. Because indeed, according to Andrew Nella, there are some deranged takes about the protests and the boycotts. Some insane... I think the most insane take has to go to Andrew Neil. So he initially tweeted out this ridiculous tweet about people wanting there to be boycotts of Eurovision. This is from Toby Young, free speech absolutist, indeed. Mr. Free Speech Absolutist here from the Free Speech Union, Mr. Toby Young. Venues across the country are cancelling Eurovision gigs after Palestine protest groups instructed their followers to hound pubs showing the contest, with bars closing their doors as they fear for staff safety. I mean, I want you to see the evidence that it's about fears of staff safety and not indeed people actually showing solidarity. But whatever, I've not seen any evidence, any threats, any real threats have been given to venues showing Eurovision. But whatever, maybe just people have been protesting and asked for their businesses to not have Eurovision shown or to blank out the Israeli contestant. To be fair, probably should be doing it the Azerbaijani contestant as well, considering the actions in the Nagorno-Karabakh mirror very similarly to what Israel's been getting up to, but that's another story. And Andrew Neil, famous man who edits The Spectator, who platformed somebody who wrote an article called In Praise of the Wehrmacht. That's a thing that Andrew Neil did, by the way, platforming Taki to write that article in praise of the Wehrmacht, describing it as Nazi playbook antics, wanting to have a boycott of Eurovision because they include an apartheid state. So this person here, called Turfopus, really weird how all of the turf and pro-Israel side of this, both of these issues, seem to kind of coalesce into one singular group, describing it as being similar to being like a book burning or another Kristallnacht, would you believe? I pointed out to this because, of course, Andrew Neil said that we're not far from Kristallnacht or book burnings. Yet, if you actually want to have a look at the academic institutions being destroyed right now, indeed, this is the Islamic University of Gaza that got destroyed in a controlled demolition by the IDF in what people have been termed as scholasticide, the deliberate destruction of academic resources and academic institutions by the IDF. That's the actual book burning. This is what the actual book burning is going on. The actual Kristallnacht is what the IDF is engaging in the Gaza Strip. As you can see here, this is not indeed, as I am joking about on Twitter, an artist's impression. This is real life. This is the real destruction of books, of academic resources, of institutions of learning being deliberately engaged in as part of their cultural wiping out, ISIS style, of everything that Gaza has had and has built up over decades and centuries and millennia as one of the world's oldest cities after Jericho. In fact, the oldest continually settled and occupied city on the planet up until now. What's interesting as well is they keep saying, oh, it's like Nazi stuff. It's like Nazi rhetoric when you want boycotts of places who engage in apartheid, which is weird because when we always look back on something like, I don't know, the boycott of South African apartheid, all the liberals and conservatives look back on that and say how good it is and how good it was that people spearheaded the boycotting of South Africa. Not that Thatcher agreed, mind you. The Thatcher that Andrew Neil, of course, supported at the time as a staunch conservative. No, it's always the civil rights issues of the past that were the righteous ones. The civil rights issues now, like the civil rights issues of the people of Gaza and of Palestine, those are the bad civil rights issues that are only supported by anti-Semites and leftists and pinkos and commies and Trotskyists. That's it. But I'm sure, of course, Andrew Neil will delete all of his tweets and will wipe all of his support for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine that he's engaged in when, in 20 years' time, people will look back on what the IDF engaged in Gaza and people will look like we looked back on the boycott of South African apartheid goods. Yeah, exactly. Liberals support all human rights struggles up to the ones happening today. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just, the takes on this have been completely mental. So again, we'll go for some more absolutely unhinged takes. Let's try and find friend of the show, shall we? Bianna Wu. Here's the thing, I liked Greta Thunberg before this. Yeah, she was annoying, but she was a girl trying to make an impact for a cause she believed in. Like, I don't know, ending the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. But now she's leading some anti-Semitic hate mob of 20,000 people to harass a young woman. No, fuck you. Same, she should have stayed with the environmental mission. She ruined her brand now. Led a lynch mob hunting Jews doesn't look good on the CV. Again, this conflation of Jewish people with the actions of the Israeli state that only the pro-Zionist camp seem to want to do, despite the fact that the conflation of the international Jewish community with the actions of the Israeli government and the Israeli state is described as being textbook anti-Semitism according to the IHRA definition as such. But of course, no, it's a harassment campaign against one woman, and not indeed a boycott movement against the representation of Israel in its cultural form within the Eurovision Song Contest, as indeed it has been towards Russia for identical antics engaged in the Donbass to try and essentially annex multiple territories and multiple oblasts of Ukraine, just like Israel wants to annex more of Area C, more of the West Bank, and indeed more of the Gaza Strip. It's identical, but for some reason, boycotts against nasty Putin is good because he's an enemy, but boycotts against Netanyahu is bad because he's a geopolitical ally. Because this thing's team sports. All of this is team sports, this people. There's no rhyme, no reason, no ethics, no morals, no nothing, no international rules-based order. Just team sports. And, you know, people on the left will do team sports too. They'll support Putin and Russia because he's an enemy of the West, and they're also campists. No. The true internationalist position is to oppose imperialism, to impose annexation, to impose occupation, regardless of who it happens to, and regardless of what side of the geopolitical sphere of influence people belong to. But neither people on either side seem to want to hear it. And it's crazy. It's just crazy that people will twist reality to fit whichever kind of geopolitical group that they want to see to be the good guys, quote unquote. It's why you continue to hear, oh, well, how can you say, well, you're a queer for Palestine? You know that Hamas, they execute people for being homosexual. Yeah, I know that they do. I'm not a Hamas supporter, but I am indeed somebody who believes in the international rules-based order, the rights of people to resist occupation, and indeed upholding international law, which Israel has violated continually since October the 7th, but indeed before October the 7th, throughout its occupation, throughout its construction of settlements, and throughout its continual treatment of Gaza as an open-air prison, and deliberately so to try and sow discord amongst the Palestinian territories between the PA and between Hamas, because again, this continual military conflict between Hamas and the Israeli state is excellent cover for their ethnic cleansing of the West Bank that they continually engage in, and settlers have continually engaged in, again, completely in violation of international law. Whilst now, in Rafah, they're now engaging in further forced transfers of civilians, again an atrocity and a war crime under international law, as they march people from safe zone, which aren't actually safe, to other zones, just like they did to the Palestinians of Lida and Ramla during the Nakba. Of course, this is indeed another Nakba, but that doesn't matter to Brianna Wu, because she's decided that leftists are the bad people, and they hate Jews, and that's it. It's just anti-Semitic hate mobs. You might think if you get these people back 40 years, they would describe people protesting South African goods or South African apartheid as being anti-Afrikaner racists. It's exactly the same situation, and these people would have been the same, or just like Margaret Thatcher calling Nelson Mandela a grubby little terrorist, because they have no principles, they have no morals, they just have team sports. That's it. It's just team sports to these people. That's it. That's entirely it. And when Greta Thunberg, they say, well, she was standing up for a cause that she believed in when she was fighting climate change. But now, I don't agree with her cause. She's now the bad people and anti-Semite. Sorry, Octopus Plushie proved it, right, chat? It's honestly, these people are such ideological frauds. Complete frauds.
Right. My point is very simple. Keep politics out of it, Josh, because Eden Golan is a singer.
Would you have supported South Africa competing in sporting events and international events during the apartheid
Yes, I
years?
would. Yes, I would have, actually, because I think that you can no, actually not, because
shame on you.
Well, I disagree with you, Josh, because if you actually bring people together in sporting events, there is nothing stopping. Hang on a second, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we bring people together? One person specifically who wanted to sing a song about the war on Gaza but had to get censored by the Eurovision producers before she would sing it, representing Israel indeed. Yeah, exactly. She's just a singer. She's a small bean singer who wants to sing a song about Israel's war of ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip. Honestly, these people are just beyond the pale. And again, saying, well, actually, no, it's fine. If we just bring South Africans to the table and we can all clap along nicely, and if we're nice to each other, then the apartheid will just end on its own. When literally, the boycotts explicitly, the cultural, economic, diplomatic, and geopolitical boycotts of South Africa is explicitly what turned it round to ending apartheid. If it was up to people like Ali Mirage, it would still be an apartheid state today, because they would have been too busy expecting us to be civil to the Afrikaners rather than expecting liberation for the people of the Bantustans. Honestly, this is like crazy nonsense. To be fair though, at least it's consistently crazy.
Just pipe down for a second. If you actually have a situation where people can protest outside, I have no issue whatsoever with South African players playing at the time of apartheid, even though their government was adopting completely divisive racist policies.
It's almost like people represent the countries that they're from. It's not indeed to punish the people who are representing the country, although to be fair, one must at least have some amount of skepticism over why one would want to represent a country that engaged in such reprehensible behaviour as indeed South Africa did during the apartheid regime, or indeed Israel is engaging in right now, right? There must be somewhat of skepticism about people who would want to represent their country in the first place. But the idea, again, this kind of misanalyzing of the situation as if people are attacking Eden Galan personally and specifically, and not indeed engaging in a cultural boycott to try and force the hand of the state that she's representing, or indeed that South Africa represented, just shows you how, like, baby-brained these people are. Like, culture is important economically and politically and diplomatically. It's not just like, oh, we feel bad sharing a stage with them. It's an engaging of pressure. It's diplomatic pressure that we put on states by saying, well, you will have no cultural economic exports whilst you continue this reprehensible behaviour that you should be boycotted for. It's exactly the reason why we wanted to boycott the fact that we were staging the World Cup in Qatar, because of all of the slave labour, and indeed the fact that they were engaging in Netanyahu's campaign of funneling weapons to Hamas and funneling money to Hamas. There were good reasons for us to boycott the World Cup for being held in Qatar for the exact same reason, because it's diplomatic and economic sanctions being engaged in on a grassroots basis because our state won't do it. Yeah, exactly. I have no sympathy for people who represent countries that do these things, but the idea that we're trying to punish the singer specifically and not indeed a broader cultural boycott, again, these people, like Ian Dale, who spent the entire time going, I can't believe you're boycotting a song contest, whilst it's already being boycotted when Russia tried to participate. They've already been removed from the roster and have been for years now. Ian Dale just literally couldn't even comprehend the idea that one might boycott a cultural event, despite the Russia situation already, and the fact that South Africa were banned from playing international cricket for 2 bloody decades for an identical reason to why Israel should be not included in these cultural events as well. The fact that these people are so completely politically stupid, politically ignorant, that they just have no conception of the history of boycott movements and think that it's somehow new and specific to Israel is just kind of another flavour of this, oh, well, you protest Israel, but you won't protest Azerbaijan, or you won't protest Indonesia, or you won't protest Myanmar, or you won't protest Saudi Arabia, despite the fact the leftoids have been the one protesting these things for years, whilst our government sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, whilst our government sold weapons for Indonesia for them to commit genocide in Timor-Leste and for them to continue to occupy West Papua. It just shows you, again, how these people will only bring these things up when it's their emotional support ethno-state that they need to defend, because they don't pay attention. They're not paying attention when things happen in Kurdistan. They're not paying attention when things happen in the Nagorno-Karabakh. They're not paying attention when Egypt continues to occupy the Halab Triangle, which is the sovereign territory of Sudan, and they have been for years and years and years, because it's not relevant to them. They just see leftists being principled in critiquing Israel's apartheid regime in West Bank and Gaza. And then we'll say, oh, well, you must be anti-Semitic, you're not critiquing anybody else, when we critique everybody else. They just don't know. They just don't know because they don't care to think about it. They just don't care to think about it because they're politically ignorant. And the fact, again, you make a really good point as well, that the person who's singing for Israel is literally going to then join the IDF afterwards to help them engage in their campaign of ethnic cleansing as well. So if anybody could ever be personally implicated in the thing that we are boycotting and criticising the state they represent for, she is like the closest that there is, even though she's not, again, not the one who's being targeted here. It is the state that she represents as part of a cultural boycott. These people are just so stupid. They're so stupid, it defies reason. Again, it's like people saying, well, why aren't you protesting Bashar al-Assad? Our government doesn't arm Bashar al-Assad. Our government doesn't give diplomatic cover for Bashar al-Assad. There's a reason why liberals don't protest, because they don't understand what protest is there for. Protests have specific aims, specific desires, specific political motives, and material changes that they want to see. It's not just, I am mad about this thing, pay attention to me, which is what most liberals think that it... No, we have tangible goals. The occupations in the universities, for example, the university campuses, have a tangible goal, specifically of divestment from Israel amongst their faculties, for example. That's a tangible goal that they want to achieve. But liberals' entire conception of protest, again, current protest, they can recognise the material conception of protest goals when it was the suffragists, for example, when it was the civil rights movement, or indeed when it was the protests against apartheid South Africa, for example. When it's the current civil rights issue, they're just virtue signalling. They just want to be heard because they're mad and want people to pay attention to them. No, we want our state to stop funding the ethnic cleansing campaign of the IDF in Gaza and in the West Bank. We want our government to change policy in terms of how they deal with the state of Israel. It's not just me no likey Israel, that's bad. That's why we don't protest Bashar al-Assad, because our government has severed diplomatic ties. We already sanction Iran, for example, despite all of these, why do you ever criticise Iran? I'm like, yeah, we criticise them all the time. We just only criticise them for when they break international law or indeed oppress their own population, and not indeed when they respond in kind within international law to an Israeli government that breaks international law and the Vienna Conventions when bombing consulates, for example. But again, it's team sports. They can't recognise principles or laws or rules that people should be adhering to. They can't, because it's just team sports. Western allies good, Western opponents bad. That's it. It's just team sports to these people. Just team sports.
I've never before witnessed in anything, and now we see it in Europe, where in the Eurovision, where we've got ugly, baying crowds bullying a young woman. She's not allowed to...
Again, trying to target the person specifically, rather than actually recognising this as a cultural boycott of the state that she represents, nothing to do with the actual individual herself. All the same garbage, just a different programme.
Speak at her press conferences, people are jeering her, shouting abuse at her. This is a 20-year-old girl who is singing a song in a singing competition.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got to say, having watched her at the press conference, I thought she really held herself very well. And it's kind of made me...
There was actually terrible, sorry to interrupt, but there was terrible behaviour from the Greek entrant.
Terrible.
Who was yawning. Look, I think that...
So, you can't yawn, that's rude. That's a bad protest. Maybe you can protest by starting a petition. Yawning in front of somebody, though, that is a line that cannot be crossed with criticising states engaging in ethnic cleansing.
You have the right, if you dislike Israel, as you do in any... I would the crowd has the right, as they have with many other acts, to not vote or boo even if they want to. They've done that for many acts before, but you let people participate and you let the voters or whomever else have their say. But I think for the other artists to be doing that, that's unprofessional. That's wrong.
Yes. And we've now got the...
Oh no, I can't believe they'd be unprofessional whilst ethnic cleansing is happening. Oh, diddums! Oh, the small bean Israeli entrant is going to get offended because other people aren't being professional, are they, Christo? I'm sure the people of Rafah are going to be incredibly upset that the people who are representing their interests are yawning and being unprofessional.
Dutch entry has not been allowed to perform live at the semi, and we don't really know what they...
Well, so they assaulted a photographer outside, and it looks like they won't be able to perform live, and they're going to stream a rehearsal. So we've got one, and this has never happened in the history of Eurovision before. So we've got one act who's been told they can't perform because exactly for assaulting a photographer. We've got people who are there quite scared of the scenes outside, a ring of steel. And we've got, like you say, a 21-year-old contestant from Israel who I think she was told to stay in her room for her own safety. Yeah. I mean, this is really quite strange, bizarre, and quite worrying.
So,
just to forget, she's not...
Yeah, you know what's strange and worrying? The fact that Israel is doing ethnic cleansing. Like, I know it's kind of a trite and overused line at this point, but I just... The scale to which these people just are getting mad about something that, in the broad scale of things, is completely overshadowed by what is going on in the Gaza Strip. It's just worth pointing out continually. It's just worth pointing out that the context of everything that's going on and the level to which these people are getting mad about protests against the state engaging in ethnic cleansing.
Not representing Israel's government.
No.
She is representing Israel, which is a democratic, free country in the world.
Is it democratic and free, Renee? Is it democratic and free for all of the people of the West Bank who are currently occupied in their little apartheid bantustans, who cannot go on the Jewish-only roads, who get terrorised by settlers, who burn their crops, who build illegal outposts at the whims of the Israeli government? Is it indeed a democratic country for those people who have no state of their own because it doesn't get properly recognised by the people who occupy them? Is that a proper democratic country, or is that an apartheid regime? Answers on a postcard, please.
Let's remember that.
I have to point out, guys, to top it all off, you've got Greta Thunberg there, who's allegedly got a bit bored of climate change,
Thank
and
you.
now she's getting involved with this cause.
So as if the music's not bad enough. You've got Greta
There's been a
Thunberg.
really easy thing.
Yeah, because you know what's also bad, and people hate ethnic cleansing? You know what's also bad alongside climate breakdown? Ethnic cleansing? These things are both bad. One can indeed think that two things are bad at once. Or do you think that all people who belong to a social cause or support a social cause are not allowed to support any other social causes? No, Greta, you have decided to be in the climate action camp. Therefore, you're now not allowed to have any other political opinions or any causes that you believe in.
Flop from the climate activists into Hamas supporting behaviour, because that's what they're doing.
Oh, yes, of course. Greta Thunberg is now Hamas, everybody. This is it. This is it. Malmo is Hamas and Greta Thunberg is Hamas. Everyone is Hamas. Is Hamas in the room with you right now, Renee?
So
That's my question for you.
When we banned Russia from taking part, it was because we didn't agree with their actions and we supported Ukraine. So by wanting Israel out, we are saying we are not agreeing with Israel and we are supporting the other side. Well, the other side in this war...
Well, yes, exactly. We support Palestinians. We support the Palestinians to not be ethnically cleansed in the same way that we support Ukraine not being invaded. It's very, very simple rhetoric. Occupation is bad, Renee.
Because Russia was the aggressor. Russia went into, another democratic country went into a democratic member of NATO, not NATO, sorry, because if they'd have done that, they would have been terrible, of Europe. But Israel wasn't the aggressor here.
Was it not? Was it not, Renee? Do you want to remind me, Renee, what was happening in Sheikh Jarrah and Al-Aqsa in the months preceding October the 7th? Do you want to just kind of cast your memory back to what was described as the deadliest year for Palestinians in decades, which was 2023 from October the 6th and backwards? Was Israel not the aggressor when they invaded and kicked people out and engaged in military activities in Sheikh Jarrah and Al-Aqsa, which explicitly was said by Hamas that October the 7th was a retaliation for? Seems to me like the aggressor here was Israel, especially considering the belligerent occupation they've been engaging in ever since 1967. Well, no, but your history began on October the 7th, chat. All history began there. Anything else is just completely irrelevant. There was no history before October the 7th.
This war started after Hamas made an attack on Israel.
Oh my God, I actually cannot believe that Eurovision has become a debate about Hamas. What's going on?
But I also, just to add, a lot of people are now saying, even in the UK...
Yeah, exactly. They would have said, oh no, but it's South Africa playing cricket has now become a debate about Nelson Mandela. That's exactly the same thing that you're saying here. You're exactly the same thing. Oh, people want to boycott South Africa from playing international cricket. Well, you must be in league with the grubby terrorist Nelson Mandela. Not to say that Nelson Mandela is necessarily the same as Hamas, because clearly he is not. Nelson Mandela supported peaceful and, I guess, non-lethal resistance in South Africa. But people described him as being a terrorist all the same. And the existence of the Palestinians is incredibly analogous to the existence of black South Africans under apartheid. So, again, these people, they only support civil rights issues that have happened previously. The current civil rights issue, though, that's beyond the pale, though, chat. It's beyond the pale. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.